Hi, I'm Chris Sangster, and welcome back to the studio. Today we're going to continue our process of recording and producing professional sounding vocal tracks in Logic Pro. In the last video, we looked at the entire recording process, from setup to acoustics to self-recording and producing. If you haven't already checked out that video, I'll leave a link for it in the description box below. The next step in the process after we have recorded all of the necessary vocal parts is comping. Comping is a shorthand term that actually has several meanings in the greater musical world, but for our purposes here, it is a shortening of compositing. In comping, we are creating a composite track of the best pieces of each take we captured to give us the best possible performance. And vocal comping is really key to getting a professional, polished, final vocal sound. We want to use the advantages that we are afforded with a digital audio workstation workflow to create the best possible vocal take, one that combines the best aspects of pitch, rhythm, and emotional performance. In this process, we will be listening intently for correct notes, correct rhythms, and most importantly, for those magical moments of performance that will elicit the correct emotional response in the listener. Now, when you are recording another person, I think it's best practice to keep track of the best takes as you go, so you have a reference to use when comping. You could do this in one of two ways. First, you could simply just use a pen and paper to write down the best takes of each section. Or my preferred method is to create comps in Logic as you go. Either in between takes or when there's a little pause in the session, create a comp of what you perceived as the best takes so that you have a jump start on the comping process once you're finished recording the artist. If you do this though, be sure to create a duplicate comp before recording the next take. Click on this little box with the letter A inside it in the top left-hand corner of the comp region and select Duplicate Comp. This will create a copy of your comp you have just made that you can then record over top of. Because when you record a new take, Logic automatically replaces your last comp. So you'll lose your work if you don't take this extra step. And when you want to switch back to the comp you already made, go back to the same menu where it now has a little B instead of an A, and you can switch back to your original comp, which is called Comp A. It can also be helpful to do a final comp of the lead track before recording doubles. That way the artist can hear the track they need to match with their performance of the double. But when you're recording yourself, I find that it's best to just leave comping to a separate step altogether. That way you can focus fully on recording and performing. You're already wearing two hats during the process of recording yourself, and I don't think it helps to add another process into the mix at that time. All right, let's jump into Logic Pro and get ready to start comping. We have all of the vocal tracks we recorded here, and I'm just gonna quickly color them so we can distinguish them a bit easier. Hit Option C on your keyboard to bring up the color palette. I use shades of red for my vocals, so leads will be the true red, harmonies a bit darker, and then backgrounds this darkest shade. I'm also going to arrange the track order a bit just so we have the harmonies right underneath the lead tracks. Then here are my scratch tracks, and I'm just gonna hide these so they don't clutter up my screen. But so they're still in the session and I can go back and reference them if I need to. Make sure they're muted and then hit H on your keyboard. Then select this green H on each of the track headers you want to hide, and then hit H again to hide them. So I love comping in Logic Pro. It is such an easy and intuitive way to choose the best parts of each take. So when you record an audio region over top of an existing audio region, Logic automatically creates a comp folder, which is denoted by this disclosure triangle in the top left-hand corner of the region. And if we click on that triangle, you see we get all of the takes we did of this verse laid out one after the other, with take 8 here at the top down to take 1 at the bottom. Then here at the very top of the layout, we have our comp track. This is the composite take of all of the pieces of takes 1 through 8 that we have chosen. To choose a piece of a take, you simply click with your mouse and swipe across the part you wish to select. And you can see the waveform on the comp track has changed to reflect this new selection. It has also automatically added crossfades on either side of the selection. This is done to prevent any pops and clicks in the comp, and you can pre-select the lengths of these automatically created crossfades and the shape of them by going to the Audio Settings menu and then choosing the Editing tab. By default, it is a 20 millisecond crossfade with no curve, in other words, a linear shaped fade. I find these are great default settings, but you can tweak them if you like. And we will go over how to manually adjust these fades for specific comp points later in the video. Before we get to comping, there's one more feature of Logic Pro's Quick Swipe comping system that you need to be aware of. And it's the ability to switch to take editing mode. This little icon here in the top left-hand corner of the comp region that looks like little stacked blocks denotes that we are in Quick Swipe comping mode. But if you click on it, you see that it changes to an icon of scissors. And this lets us know that we are in take editing mode. In take editing mode, instead of being able to swipe to select pieces of each take to make a comp, you can edit each take as if it was its own audio region. So you can click and hold and drag to move it around the timeline, cut it and edit it with the marquee tool, or use the gain tool to adjust its volume. And all of these changes will be reflected in the comp track if the take you are editing is selected. It is important to have this functionality, as you will see, because we will in some instances need to edit the individual takes in order to make the best possible comp. Now, in my opinion, changing from quick swipe comping mode to take editing mode by clicking on that little icon is super annoying. Thankfully, there are two much easier ways to go about it. The first is to use the keyboard shortcut Option Q, which switches a selected comp region from comp mode to take editing mode and back and forth. However, you have to have the region selected in order for this keyboard shortcut to work. So I actually have a different preferred method. If you come to the General Settings menu and then go to the Editing tab, you can enable quick swipe and take editing click zones. Like marquee tool click zones, this option changes the mode that your cursor is in based on its relative position in the take. When your cursor is positioned on the top half of a take, you are in take editing mode and can click and drag takes around and use your editing tools. But when your cursor is positioned on the bottom half of a take, you are in quick swipe comping mode and can click and swipe to select the pieces of each take you wish to use for your comp. And if we want to delete a take, for example, this first take here that I didn't record anything on, we simply select it and press delete. Now we can get to creating our composite takes. My process is pretty straightforward. I'm going to start with the first verse and I will listen to the track I am comping, that is the lead vocal, with the music. But I will mute any double, background, or harmony parts for now so I can just focus on how the lead sounds and how it relates to the music. Then I will go through in small sections, usually a phrase or two at a time, and listen to each take. While doing this, I'll make a mental note of which ones I think sound best, and once I've listened to all of them, I'll make a few different comps to audition. For this song, I'm going to begin with these first two small phrases here. So I'll select the first take and listen and then progress upwards. Whiskey bottle, I know you're dead. Whiskey bottle, I know you're dead. And once you have a portion selected by itself, you can just click onto the next take in that section to move the comp selection to that take. Whiskey bottle, I know you're dead. All right, haven't heard anything that I like yet. Whiskey bottle, I know you're dead. I like this first line, whiskey bottle, on take 5. Still looking for a good take of the next line though. Take 6 was a mess up, so I'll just skip that one. Whiskey bottle, I know you're dead. Well, I like everything from take 7. Whiskey bottle, I know you're dead. And I like take 8 as well, but the I know you're in the second line was a little flat. Again, I'm listening for pitch, rhythm, and performance and trying to identify the best combination of the three. So at this point, I've identified several different takes that I like portions of. Now I'll try out these different combinations. To start, I'll stick with most of take 8 and just grab those notes that were flat in it, the I know you're from take 7.
Whiskey bottle, I know you're dead.
Works pretty well, but I want to confirm that the no and the your from take 8 were flat as well, and it wasn't just the I.
I know you're dead.
Yeah, they don't sound quite as good as the ones from take 7 to me. Let's go back to those. And then I want to audition the other takes of the first line that I made a mental note of.
Whiskey bottle, whiskey bottle, whiskey bottle.
They're all pretty good, but I like the rhythmic intensity and emotion most in take 5. So let's choose that one for our comp.
Whiskey bottle, I know you're dead.
I'm then going to repeat this process for every phrase in the first verse. So the beginning of this next phrase is a good example of when you have to make a choice between two takes that both sound good, but are delivered quite differently. The words last night's lies in take 3 are delivered much quicker with more rhythmic accuracy.
Last night's lies.
In take 5, they're delivered slower and a bit sloppier rhythmically, but they have a really cool character to them that take 3 doesn't have.
Last night's lies.
So when I come across a decision like this, I like to try to get a bit more context and listen to both takes with the previous phrases that I've already comped, just to hear how things flow with the music and flow with each other.
Whiskey bottle, I know you're dead. Last night's lies, still on my breath. Whiskey bottle, I know you're dead. Last night's lies, still on my breath.
I think I prefer the characterful take to the rhythmically accurate take in this case. Also, this next line, still on my breath, is a little quiet in the take that I like best. We could always leave this for a compression or automation later, but I find it's easier to just fix it now. I'm going to use the marquee tool to crop this phrase out on take 3, the one I've selected. And I like to make the marquee selection a bit larger than the take selection if possible to not mess up the crossover points. Then click to separate the region. Then I'll use the gain tool to raise its gain to better match the rest of the performance.
Last night's lies, still on my breath. Morning rain.
This line here, cries with the proof, is a good example of when we have to make a small edit to make our best available take the best it possibly can be. I like the performance and pitch of take 8 the best, but I come in a little early and I'm not synced up properly with the rhythm of the guitar. It just sounds a bit off.
Cries with the proof.
So to fix this, I'm first going to move the vocal track right underneath the guitar track so I can visually line them up. And then yeah, you see here the vocal comes in ever so slightly ahead of the guitar on this beat. So again, I'm going to cut this phrase out with the marquee tool on its take, and then just nudge it back slightly so it's better synced up with the guitar.
Cries with the proof. Through this fall.
When doing a very small comp like this, like taking just a word or even just one syllable from a take, it's really important that you listen carefully to those crossover points. I wanted to take just the word never from take 8 here. And to make sure this sounds correct, I zoom in very close to make sure I'm placing the crossfade in a point of the words that will sound natural. Generally at lower amplitude parts of the waveform are the places that'll work best.
I swear the storm never left.
And then I'll always listen to it in solo to make sure the comp sounds natural and that there are no glitches.
I swear the storm never left.
After I have finished my comp for the first verse, I'll go back and listen to the entire thing in context to see if anything sticks out to me as lacking or missing. And the only thing I noticed here was that I'm not getting a good TH sound on the end of this word breath. So I'll find a take that does have that and comp just the TH in. In this case, take 5 worked the best, but I did have to raise its gain some more so that the TH sound is audible in the mix.
Still on my breath.
Before we continue on with the video, I've got a free gift just for you. A topic that causes a lot of confusion in Logic Pro are buses. So I've created the definitive guide to buses in Logic Pro. In this comprehensive video guide, you'll learn what buses are, how to use them, and advanced busing techniques. We start with the very basics and go all the way through some pretty advanced stuff. And I truly believe there's something in this video for everyone. So hit the link in the description box below the like button and download your free copy today. Alright, now that we're done with the lead in the first verse, I'll move on to the double. I'm still not sure that I'm going to end up using this double in the final mix, but it's good to have just in case, and it's a good example of how I like to comp doubles. To start, I'm going to mute the lead and just comp the double on its own merit, exactly like I would with the lead, aiming to get the best composite performance possible. Once that is complete, I will then solo both the lead and the double and listen to them together. And I'm listening for places where the double does not sync up properly with the lead. The goal here is to have total rhythmic and pitch synchronization between the lead and the double. That's how we get that thickening of a sound that we associate with double-tracked vocals. We can massage it a bit later with some other tools, but it's best to get as close to perfect now as you can. The key here is to only make changes to the double in order to achieve this. We do not want to change that awesome lead comp we already made. So here in this first phrase, we can see the double is a little bit late in comparison to the lead.
Whiskey bottle.
To fix this, we're just going to chop the take of the double with the marquee tool and scoot it back to line up with the lead.
Whiskey bottle.
Sometimes you might have to choose a different take that better matches the lead, as I did here on the words on and my.
Still on my breath.
And don't be afraid to get super surgical with it. If you have to chop one syllable, move it back, fill in a gap with another take, just like I did here on the word hurricane, so be it. No detail is too small to fix now. It will make all the steps down the line easier.
It's hurricanes and...
Now we just continue on to the next section and repeat this process. A quick note here, you see that the beginning of the first word of the chorus got cut off because of the length of the cycle range I had when I was recording? Luckily, I thought ahead on this. This is the exact reason I choose to use the cycle plus pre-roll method for recording myself. Because Logic is recording during the pre-roll. It just doesn't show it in the region. This is not true if you choose to use auto punch. We can simply drag the comp region back and then drag all of our take regions back as well using our editing click zone. And there's the cutoff portion of the first word, no problems. Sometimes you have to be quite creative to get a comp to work. This type of editing work is not just tedious busy work. It takes skill and creativity to create the best sounding comp possible. Take this line in the chorus. You hear that there's a little hiccup where I made the crossover between takes?
You say the silver lining.
There are several ways we could attempt to fix this. The first port of call will always be to move the editing point to a place that sounds more natural, but that doesn't always work. It doesn't in this case because we always get a little bit of the word before or after in the crossfade, no matter where we put it. The next thing we can try is to increase the size of the crossfade. Do this by switching to the fade tool and click and drag on the comp take where the default crossfade is already happening to create a custom fade length. Unfortunately, this doesn't work in this situation either, so we have to get more creative. I tried moving the parts around a bit, but that messed with the timing of the performance too much in this instance. What has worked here is to choose a little bit of a third take to be just a pause in between the words so we have a clean gap.
You say the silver linings at the end.
Now, when it comes time to comp harmonies, my process varies slightly from when I am comping background vocals. Instead of muting the lead and comping the harmonies on their own first, I'm going to leave the lead on and comp the harmony lines along to it. This is because I really want to hear how the pitches are locking together. But I find it a bit distracting to have all of the doubles on as well, so I will just mute those and leave just the main lead track on. Then I'll turn just the first harmony track on and comp it, and I will comp each one by itself against the lead, and then check them all together at the end to see how they're all blending. Now, because of how I want the harmonies to sit in this track, I'm going to ruthlessly edit them while I'm comping. I want the beginnings and endings of these harmonies to be perfectly in sync for a really impactful, crisp sound. But I didn't sing them that way, so I'll have to edit to achieve this effect. For example, I sang this word say way too long. So I'm going to cut it out with the marquee tool and then drag the end of the take back to shorten it to the right length, and then use the fade tool to add a fade out to the comp track to make the ending sound natural.
Say the silver line.
I had to do this technique a lot while comping these harmonies. I even had to get more surgical on this word here, because I still wanted to hear the L at the end of the word feel. I had to cut out a section of the middle of the note and blend it together with a crossfade to shorten the note but still retain that final consonant. So you really have to play around with the crossover point and crossfade length to make a move like this sound natural. But I think in the context of this song, I pulled it off pretty well.
I feel the thunder rolling in.
As I said, you can use other tools later in the process to refine these types of things. But I find that good old-fashioned editing still yields the most natural sounding results because it does not warp the audio in any way. Again, I'll give things a final listen in context to make sure I didn't miss anything because I was examining the parts so closely.
I feel the thunder rolling in. You say the silver linings at the end. Maybe there's hope around the bend, but I'm so broken, there's nothing left to mend.
Alright, now I have gone through and created my comps for all the vocal tracks in my session. The last thing I like to do before moving on from comping is to listen to all the vocals together in solo. And I'm listening for two specific things here. One is bad edits, places where I put the comp crossover point in a less than ideal spot and things sound unnatural, or worst case scenario if there are any pops or clicks in the audio. Thankfully, I didn't hear anything on that front in this song. The next thing I'm listening for are breaths, specifically double breaths. This is when an edit has been placed in between a word and there's a breath on one side of the edit and a breath on the other side of the edit. You can hear an example of this here.
But through this fall.
Let me turn it up. Listen again for the double take on the breath before but through this fog.
But through this fall.
You hear it? And we can see in the comp here it's happening because of an edit I made and probably because the crossover point is just in the wrong space. And I ended up having to try out a few different crossover points and fade sizes to even this out and make it sound natural.
The proof.
But the thing I'm not worried about at this time is the timing between breaths on the lead and the doubles. You will sometimes get a double breath sound when these two aren't synced up. But I like to handle this during mixing. Sometimes I will go through and eliminate all of the breaths on the double track. But this is a decision I like to leave for later down the line. I just leave them as they naturally are when comping. This is because a lot of times I find it's just not an issue at the end of the day once the full track is done. And it's just going to be unnecessary time spent at this stage. And of course, we'll give things one final listen through with the music to make sure all of the comps and edits sound good in context. One final note, notice that I am not flying my vocals at this point in time. This is the process of recording, say, the chorus just once, and then copying those vocals over to the other choruses in the song. I do plan to do that for this song, but I leave that until after I have completed the final stage of my vocal recording and editing process, tuning, which I will go over in detail in my next video. Until then, Thanks so much for watching. If you have any questions, please leave them in the comments below. I would be happy to answer them. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, and I'll see you at the studio next time. Thanks.